The night I found that old suitcase key, I realized my husband had been a stranger in my own house. It was no bigger than my thumbnail, cold as a coin left on a gravestone. The teeth were worn down, like they'd been used too many times by someone in a hurry. And when I closed my fingers around it, it felt heavier than it had any right to feel. I'm telling you this now because tonight, after all these years, I finally used it. I finally opened the suitcase we were always told was not for us. And inside it was the proof of my father's biggest lie, the one that shaped our family like a mold you can't see until it's already in your lungs. My name is Eleanor. Most folks call me Nana now. And if you've ever lived in a home where certain names were never spoken, where questions sat on your tongue like hot soup you couldn't swallow, then you'll understand why my hands were shaking before I even reached the attic stairs. Because what do you do when the truth is locked away for decades, and you're the one holding the key? Let me start at the beginning. Not the beginning of his lie. The beginning of mine, when I believed him. I found the key in my sewing tin. The blue one with the cracked lid that never quite snapped shut. It was under the loose buttons and safety pins, tucked in the corner like it had been trying to hide. Now, I hadn't opened that tin in weeks. My fingers aren't as nimble as they used to be, and I've been mending less, letting hems go the way of old women who stop caring what strangers think. But my granddaughter, Lucy, had brought over a winter coat for me to patch. Her grandfather's old coat. My husband's. The same coat that used to hang on the hook by the back door like a quiet soldier waiting for orders. And when I slid my hand into the inside pocket, just to check for tissues, old receipts, the kinds of little leftovers men carry, I felt something hard and sharp. At first I thought it was a pen. Then I pinched it between my fingers and pulled it out. A key. Not a house key. Not a car key. A suitcase key. It had a little notch on the bow, like a tag used to be tied there. And for a moment, my mind went blank in that strange way it does when something too old suddenly becomes present again. Like smelling a perfume you haven't smelled since high school and getting knocked backward in time. Because I knew that key. I didn't know why I knew it. But my skin knew. My stomach knew. I turned it over, and there, almost rubbed away, were two faint letters stamped into the metal. HS. Not our last name. Not our initials. Not anything that belonged to the life I'd lived. And that's when I remembered the suitcase. The suitcase nobody opened. It lived above us for years. Not in the open. Never in the open. Always tucked away like a bad thought. Top shelf of the attic closet, pushed behind old quilts and a broken fan we kept meaning to throw out. The suitcase was brown leather once. By the time I was brave enough to look at it closely, it was the color of old pennies and cigarette ash. The handle was cracked. One corner had a scuff mark like it had been dragged. And the lock, always locked, sat there like a clenched jaw. My husband, Robert, called it old work things. He said it like that explained everything. Old work things. The first time I asked about it, I was newly married. Still hopeful. Still foolish enough to think marriage meant full access to a person. I remember standing under the attic hatch, looking up. What's in the suitcase? I asked, light and teasing. He didn't tease back. He went still. Not angry. Not loud. Just empty. And he said, that is not for us. Not for you. Not none of your business. For us. Like the suitcase belonged to a different version of our family, one that didn't include truth. Then he climbed the ladder himself, moved it deeper into the shadows, and came down without looking at me. And from that day on, I learned the rules. Rule 1, don't ask about the suitcase. Rule 2, don't say certain names. Rule 3, don't press when he goes quiet, because quiet was the start of something worse. Have you ever lived with a person who could punish you without raising their voice? A person who could make the whole house behave just by setting their jaw? That was Robert. He wasn't cruel in the way strangers understand cruelty. He could be charming. He brought home caramel candies for the children. He fixed broken chairs. He kissed my forehead before work. But love in our house always came with a condition. Stay in line. Stay grateful. Stay blind. So when that key slid out of his coat pocket, it didn't feel like I'd found metal. It felt like I'd found a loose thread in a sweater I'd worn my whole life. And if I pulled it, something was going to unravel. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time with that key in my palm. The clock ticked like it was counting down to a decision. The house smelled like dish soap and cold coffee. Outside, the wind pushed dry leaves across the porch like little brown secrets. Lucy called from the living room, "Nana, did you find a needle?" And I almost said yes. Almost lied the way I'd been trained to lie. Instead, I said, "Give me a minute, sweetheart." Because what I found wasn't a needle. It was permission. Or maybe it was a warning. That night, after Lucy went home and the dishes were stacked and the house settled into its nighttime creaks, I took the key upstairs. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Some truths need a quiet room before they can survive voices. The attic ladder groaned under my weight like it was protesting. Dust rose with every step. I coughed into my sleeve, tasting old wood and forgotten summers. And there it was. The suitcase. Even in the dark, it looked guilty. I pulled it forward, and something scraped, softly, like the suitcase didn't want to be moved. I set it on the floorboards, right under the dangling bulb. The light flickered once, and I swear my heart did the same. My hands hovered over the lock. I could still hear Robert's voice, even though he'd been gone 2 years. That is not for us. But here's what grief does. It makes you realize the dead can't punish you anymore. Only the living can. And I was tired of living in a story I didn't write. So I slid the key into the lock. It fit like it had been waiting. The lock turned. And in that tiny sound, click, I felt something inside me crack open too. I lifted the clasps. They complained like old knees. A breath of air came out of the suitcase, stale and sweet with mothballs, paper, and time. And then I saw the first thing. A photograph. Not of us. It was a wedding photo, black and white, edges scalloped. A man in a dark suit, hair neatly combed, standing stiff beside a woman in a veil. His smile was small. Practiced. The man was Robert. My Robert. Younger, yes, but unmistakable. Same eyes. Same chin. Same way he held his shoulders like he was bracing for judgment. But the woman? Not me. Not even close. My throat tightened so fast it felt like my body was trying to swallow the truth before my mind could see it. I ran my thumb over the woman's face like I could rub her away. I couldn't. Because there was more. Tucked behind the photo was a dried sprig of something, maybe baby's breath from a bouquet, and a plain gold ring tied with thread. Not my ring. And there, written on the back of the photograph in careful handwriting, were words that made my stomach drop. Henry and Sarah, June 1968. Henry. Robert's name wasn't Henry. At least, it wasn't supposed to be. So who was I married to? I sat back on my heels, the attic spinning just slightly. The bulb hummed above me. My fingers went numb around the photograph. Then I saw the papers. A thin stack, tied with a faded blue ribbon. The top sheet was a marriage certificate. Official seal. County stamp. Clear as day. Groom, Henry Samuel Carter. Bride, Sarah Mae Whitaker. And under that, another document. A birth certificate. Mother, Sarah Mae Whitaker. Father, Henry Samuel Carter. Child, Michael James Carter. Date of birth, 1970. 2 years after that wedding photo. 6 years before Robert and I ever met. My lungs forgot what to do. I had to place the papers down just to breathe. Because this wasn't a harmless secret. This wasn't old work things. This was a whole life. A wife. A son. And I had never heard their names in my house. Not once. A secret doesn't stay buried, it grows roots. I remember the rule about names. How he'd correct the children if they asked about uncle this or aunt that. How he'd flinch when the phone rang late. How he'd go outside to take certain calls, even in winter, even in rain. Was it them calling? Was it his son? I dug deeper. Under the documents were envelopes. Some opened, some still sealed. The paper was yellowed, corners soft from handling. One envelope had lipstick on the flap, faded to a rust stain. Another had a child's handwriting on the front, Dad. My fingers trembled so hard I could hear them rustle the paper. The first letter I opened was dated 1979. That caught my attention because that's the year Robert made us move. Suddenly. No discussion. Just boxes and a new address and his tight smile. The letter was from Sarah. Henry, it began. I saw you in town. I didn't stop you. Michael did. He ran after your car until he couldn't. He came home with blood on his knee and asked me why his father drove away like he didn't know him. I pressed my hand to my mouth. The attic felt too small for the air in it. Sarah's letter continued. I'm not asking for romance. I'm asking for decency. He's 9. He deserves a birthday card. He deserves his name spoken without shame. My eyes blurred. And in my mind, I saw my own children at 9. Their scraped knees. Their expectant faces on birthdays. The way they'd run to the door when they heard a car. Robert had given my children caramel candies and bedtime stories. And somewhere else, his other child was running after a car. Did Robert ever look back? I turned the page. Sarah wrote, if you won't come yourself, then at least stop sending your sister to my door with warnings. His sister. My pulse jumped. Because Robert had a sister. Lillian. And Lillian was the kind of woman who kept her hair pinned tight and her opinions tighter. She hugged you with one arm and judged you with the other. She was always around when something needed to be handled. So Lillian knew. All those years at Thanksgiving when she sat quiet at the end of the table, watching everyone like she was counting mistakes, she knew. I kept reading, half desperate, half terrified of what I'd find next. There was a motel receipt. Same town Sarah mentioned. There was a bus ticket stub. There was a photograph of a boy, about 12, standing by a baseball fence, glove on his hand, squinting into the sun. On the back, Michael. 1982. I stared at that boy's face until it started to feel like he might blink. Because he looked like my youngest son, David. Same slope of the nose. Same ears that stuck out just a little. That's when the grief turned sharp. Not just grief for me. Grief for all of us, shaped by a lie we didn't consent to. I sat there a long time, turning objects over like stones, the ring, the photo, the letters, the documents. Each one was a piece of a man I thought I knew. And the more pieces I found, the less room there was for the story he'd fed us. So let me take you back. Back to the years when the lie wasn't paper in my hands yet, when it was a fog in the hallways. When Robert and I met, he told me he'd lost people. He didn't say who. He said it with a sad little shrug, like it was just the weather. I was young. I thought that kind of mystery meant depth. I thought silence meant pain that deserved patience. We married fast. He liked things fast. Quick decisions, clean edges, no lingering conversations. At dinner, he expected peace. Not joy, peace. Peace meant no questions. I remember one night, our oldest, Marjorie, was maybe 7. She asked, Dad, why doesn't Aunt Lillian like Grandma's sister? It was an innocent question. A child question. Robert's fork paused midair. The whole table went quiet like someone had turned off the radio. He said, "We don't talk about that." Marjorie asked, "Why?" And his voice went flat. "Because I said so." Then he stood up, opened the kitchen drawer too hard, and the silverware jumped. He didn't hit anyone. He didn't need to. He took his coffee outside and stayed there long enough that the coffee went cold and so did the air in the house. That's how it worked. You learned what cost too much. You learned what not to want. The phone calls were the strangest. Sometimes the phone would ring and Robert would glance at me first, always me, like he needed to see if I'd betray him by listening. Then he'd pick up and say, "Hello," and his voice would change, just a shade. Not softer. Smaller. He'd take the cord as far as it could stretch and step into the hallway, or out onto the porch, and shut the door. And afterward he'd come back in and act like he had been talking to the electric company. If I asked, he'd say, "Just business." But we never had a business. Now I wonder, was it Sarah? Was it Michael? Was it Lillian keeping watch? Here's the part that hurts the most. There were moments Robert almost told me. I see them now, clearer than I want to. Like the time we were in the car, passing a little league field. A boy hit a ball and ran, legs pumping, so proud of himself. Robert's hands tightened on the steering wheel. His knuckles went white. And he whispered, so quietly I almost missed it, "That could have been." Then he stopped. Swallowed the sentence. Became Robert again. I didn't push. I thought I was being kind. But kindness can be a tool a liar uses, if you hand it to him. So yes, his lie shaped our home. It shaped the way I walked around silence. It shaped the way my children learned not to ask. It shaped the way love felt like something you could lose if you reached for it too hard. And it all came back to that suitcase. Because the suitcase wasn't just hiding paper. It was hiding a whole person's right to be remembered. Back in the attic, I kept reading. Another letter, this one in Lillian's handwriting. "Henry," it said. Not Robert. Not brother. Henry. You promised me this would be finished. Your wife must never know. The children must never know. If they know, you lose everything we built. Everything we built. Not everything you built. We. There was a name at the bottom of the letter. Not signed, but referenced. Pastor Alden says the matter can be settled if you stop responding. A pastor. My mind went cold in a different way now. Because Pastor Alden married Robert and me. My throat went dry. Was the man who blessed our marriage also helping hide his first one? I found a folded pamphlet from that same church. Inside, a note in Robert's handwriting. Alden has the file. If anything happens, burn this. Burn this. Not keep safe. Not for my children. Burn this. Not keep safe. Not for my children. Burn this. That's when the lie changed shape. It wasn't just that Robert had a secret wife and child. It was that he built a system around it, people, authority, religion, family loyalty, so the truth couldn't reach me. And suddenly, so many things made awful sense. Why we moved in 1979. Why Robert insisted on a new church. Why Lillian kept such close watch over the mail. Why Robert never wanted the kids to do ancestry projects for school. Why he got furious when Marjorie once asked about family trees. Because trees have roots. And his roots were tangled in somebody else's life. I sat on the attic floor and thought about Sarah. About Michael. About the way the word "Dad" looked in a child's handwriting on an envelope that never got answered. Then another thought came, quiet and brutal. If Robert could erase them, what else could he erase? I closed the suitcase. Not because I was done. Because I needed to decide what kind of woman I was going to be next. Would I protect his story the way I always had? Or would I finally protect the truth, even if it made my family angry at me? Downstairs, I poured a glass of water with shaking hands. The kitchen light buzzed. The house felt like it was holding its breath. And then I did the hardest thing. I called my children. All of them. Come tomorrow, I said. After lunch. I need you here. My daughter Marjorie said, "Is it about Dad?" And I paused. Because even after death, his name still rearranged the room. Yes, I told her. It's about your father. The next day, they came one by one, carrying their own versions of him. Marjorie arrived first, tight-lipped, already defensive. She was always the one who tried to keep peace by pretending nothing happened. David came next, quiet, jaw working like he was chewing down a memory. And my youngest, Rose, walked in and looked around like she expected the walls to start talking. I brought the suitcase down and put it on the dining table. The same table where we'd eaten years of careful meals. David stared at it and said, "That thing. He still kept it?" Marjorie frowned. "Mom, why are you dragging this out now?" I held up the key. Lucy leaned forward. "Where did you get that?" "In your grandfather's coat," I said. And for the first time in a long time, I watched my children become children again, faces tightening with the old instinct to obey. I opened the suitcase slowly. The sound made Rose flinch. I took out the wedding photo and set it on the table. No words yet. Just the picture. Marjorie leaned in, then froze. "That's Dad." David's eyes narrowed. "Who's the woman?" I placed the marriage certificate down beside it. Then the birth certificate. Then the envelope that said, "Dad." The room went silent in a way I recognized too well. Rose whispered, "Is this real?" I nodded once. It felt like dropping a stone into a well. "Yes," I said. "Your father was married before me. And he had a son." Marjorie pushed back from the table so hard her chair scraped. "No. No, he didn't." Her voice rose, sharp, scared. "He would have told us." David picked up the photo of the boy and stared at it. His mouth opened and closed, like the words couldn't decide to exist. Finally he said, "That kid looks like me." Lucy covered her mouth, eyes filling. "So we have an uncle?" Rose's face went pale. Why would he hide that? And there it was. The question we'd never been allowed to ask, finally spoken in my dining room. Why? I slid Lillian's letter across the table. Then Pastor Alden's name. Then Robert's note, "Burn this." Marjorie read it and her hands started to shake. Aunt Lillian knew. David looked at me, anger sparking. "Did you know?" And that one hurt because it was fair. I swallowed. I suspected something. I didn't know this. Marjorie's eyes flashed. "So you just let him control everything?" I flinched, because the truth is, yes. I did. Not because I was weak. Because I was trained. Because I was afraid. Because I thought peace was the same thing as love. Rose started to cry, quietly at first, then harder. "So he lied to us our whole lives." Lucy reached for her hand. David's voice went low. "We need to find him." Marjorie snapped, "No. We don't. Dad is dead. Let him stay dead." David turned to her. "You don't get to decide that." Marjorie shot back, "And you do?" The room crackled with old resentment. Not just about this suitcase, about every moment we swallowed words to keep Robert calm. I raised my hand, not to silence them, but to steady myself. "There's more," I said. And I pulled out the last item. A small address book. Worn. Soft leather cover. On the inside flap, in Sarah's handwriting, a phone number. Next to it, one word, Michael. My children stared at the number like it might bite. Lucy whispered, "Call him." Marjorie said, "Don't." David said, "We have to." Rose sobbed, "What if he hates us?" And I thought, what if he should? What if the anger he carries is the only honest inheritance he ever got from my husband? I picked up the phone. My fingers hovered over the buttons. Then I stopped and looked at my family, my real family, the one built on birthdays and school plays and burnt dinners and forgiveness for small things. Are you sure? I asked them. Because once you speak the truth out loud, you can't put it back in the suitcase. David nodded. Lucy nodded through tears. Rose nodded. Marjorie hesitated, then whispered, "Just, be careful." So I dialed. Each ring sounded like a footstep down a hallway I'd avoided my whole life. Finally, a man answered. "Hello?" His voice was deeper than I expected. Tired. Cautious. I swallowed hard. "My name is Eleanor," I said. I believe your mother may have been Sarah Whitaker." Silence. Then, carefully, "Who is this?" I looked at the wedding photo on the table, at Robert's younger face smiling that practiced smile. And I said the words that felt like stepping off a cliff. "I was married to Henry. To Robert. I didn't know about you." A long breath on the other end. And then, in a voice that cracked just slightly, the man said, "I wondered when someone would finally tell the truth." Rose covered her mouth. Lucy started crying openly. David stared at the table like it was moving. Marjorie sat very still, like if she moved she'd shatter. Michael spoke again. "Is he alive?" And I hated that I had to be the messenger for the one kindness Robert couldn't deny anymore. "No," I said. "He passed 2 years ago." Another silence. This one heavier. Then Michael said, "He left me a suitcase once. When I was a kid. But it was empty." His voice sharpened. "Just a lock. Like a joke." My eyes closed. Because that was Robert's style, wasn't it? Control, even in cruelty. "I'm sorry," I whispered. And for the first time, I wasn't apologizing for something small. I was apologizing for a whole stolen history. Michael's voice softened. "What's in it?" I looked at the papers. The ring. The letters. The proof. "Your name," I said. "Your mother's handwriting. Evidence that you weren't imagining him. And a key," I added. "A key he kept all this time." Michael exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for 50 years. "I don't know what I want from you," he said. "But I'd like to see it. I'd like to see her letters again." David leaned toward me, whispering, "Tell him he can." So I did. "You can," I told Michael. "If you want, you can come here. Or I can bring it to you. Whatever feels safest." Michael paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was smaller, like a boy by a baseball fence. "Did he love you?" he asked. That question hit me like cold water. Because the answer was complicated. "He tried," I said slowly. "In the way a scared man tries. But he also controlled us. And I think he confused control for love. Love shouldn't require your silence." Michael didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Okay. Let's talk again soon." When I hung up, the room stayed quiet. Not Robert's quiet. Not fear quiet. A different quiet. The kind that comes after a storm, when the air is cleared and everything looks newly exposed. Rose wiped her face. "So what happens now?" I looked at the suitcase. This little box of old paper and old choices. This little tomb of a life my husband tried to bury. And I realized something. The key didn't just open the suitcase. It opened a doorway between what we were told, and what was real. It unlocked the forbidden names. Sarah. Michael. Henry. It unlocked the way our family learned to accept half love and call it enough. David cleared his throat. "We should tell Aunt Lillian we know." Marjorie's jaw tightened. "She'll deny it." Maybe, I said. But denial won't change what's already true. Lucy asked softly, "Are you okay, Nana?" And here's what I told her, the honest answer. "No," I said. "But I'm real. I'm not living inside his story anymore." That week, I did something I never thought I'd do. I drove to the cemetery alone. I stood in front of Robert's headstone, and I didn't bring flowers. I brought the key. I held it up and said out loud, "Your son has a name." And then I said it again, louder, like a bell. "Michael." The wind moved through the trees. A car passed on the road. Life didn't stop for secrets being exposed. I didn't spit on his grave. I didn't praise him either. I just told the truth where he could no longer edit it. And when I turned to leave, I felt something I didn't expect. Not forgiveness. Relief. Because here's what I've learned, late in life but still in time to matter. You can miss a person and still admit they were wrong. You can grieve what you thought you had and still choose honesty. You can open a suitcase and stop passing the lockdown to your children. A few days later, Michael sent a text from an unfamiliar number. Just a simple message. "It's strange," he wrote, "to exist on paper in your house." I stared at that sentence for a long time. Because he was right. We had kept him out of our house, out of our stories, out of our mouths, without even knowing it. And yet there he was now, stepping into the light one letter at a time. My family isn't magically healed. We're not a greeting card. Marjorie is still angry, maybe she always will be, because anger is what shows up when you realize your childhood was edited. David is determined, making plans like he can build a bridge fast enough to make up for decades. Rose is tender and frightened, like she's scared one more truth will knock the breath out of her. Lucy watches all of us like she's memorizing what honesty costs. But something has changed. We say the names now. We don't flinch at the phone ringing. And the attic feels less haunted. If you're still here with me, I want to ask you something. What's the suitcase in your family? What subject makes the room go cold? Because sometimes the smallest object, a key, a photograph, a letter, doesn't just reveal the past. It reveals the shape of the silence you've been living in. And if this story moved you, if it reminded you of your own family's locked doors, please tap like. It helps this channel, Dust of Old Days, reach more people who need a place to set these heavy stories down for a while. And if you want more grandmother style, slow burn, nostalgic mysteries, stories where one hidden object changes everything, make sure you subscribe to Dust of Old Days. As for the key, I keep it in my sewing tin now. Not hidden. Not buried under buttons. Right on top. Because it doesn't belong to Robert anymore. It belongs to the truth. And the suitcase? It's not a myth now. It's evidence. It's history. And this time, it's for us.